Kratos. For once in your pathetic life, don't fail. Don't fail her like you failed your family.
Before I start the video, as a quick reminder, check out my links down below to help support the channel. I am now in partnership with Baron of Dice. They have some awesome TCG accessories like playmats, deck boxes, and dice. And if you want to level up your setup, it is the perfect way to do so. And if you want to support the channel directly and get some sweet perks, consider joining the Patreon. If you want to get early access to videos or even some deck help, Patreon is where it's at. And so without further ado, let's get back into the video. Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Devin with Jurassic Magic, and today we're unleashing the true God of War in Magic the Gathering. Recently, there was a new PlayStation X Secret Lair announced with God of War. There's going to be two different versions, one for Greek and one for Norse. Today, I'm going to go over the Greek version with Kratos as the commander, and just like the Blades, this is going to be pure chaos. He's here to slaughter gods, smash face, and punish anyone who dares sit on the sidelines. In my lifetime, I've played every single God of War game, and when the Secret Lair was spoiled, my inner kid, and let's just be real, just my inner self, just screamed with joy. So as a lifelong God of War fan, I put a lot of effort into this deck to make sure it just captures Kratos' absolute fury during the Greek Pantheon saga. And in this video, we're talking about relentless combat, punishing hesitation, and finishing the table with pure rage-fueled power. So let's dive into this chaos and bring the war to Commander.
Zeus! Your son has returned. I bring the destruction of Olympus!
So first things first, in order to achieve a great deck, we need to know what the commander does. So Kratos, God of War, man, I'm just getting chills when I'm reading this because, man, it's on a magic card. For triple red, it's a legendary creature, God Warrior, and it has double strike. All creatures have haste, so including your creatures and your opponent's creatures. He also has the ability at the beginning of each player's end step, Kratos deals damage to that player equal to the number of creatures that player controls that didn't attack this turn. And there's a lot of discussing ways we can manipulate people into attacking each other. I was talking to one of my other friends, and he said that is basically the most red cards to ever exist. And honestly, I think he's right. The fact that he's giving all creatures haste, everything's going into chaos, he wants everyone to attack, he's leading everyone into impulse. This is basically the most mono red commander to ever exist. Also in this secret lair, you will receive 4 other cards. There is Hades' Grip, or otherwise known as Sulfuric Vortex, which is basically a Punisher style effect. There is also Kratos' Rage, or otherwise known as Pyrohemia. This is really good in an enraged strategy. I don't know if it's necessarily good in here, but it's going to be in the deck regardless because it's Kratos' Rage after all. There's Rite of Flame, or otherwise known as the Blade of Chaos Bond, which just gets you extra mana, and this works kind of well with Kratos because we need 3 red pips. Even though we're in a mono red deck, having that extra pip of red will help us enable getting Kratos out on the battlefield. And last but not least, we have World at War, or otherwise known as Battle of Olympus, and this art just speaks to me. At the end of God of War 3, we fight Zeus and eventually win, and then of course everything just descends into chaos after that. I just love this art so much just for the significant impact it had on me beating Zeus in God of War 3. But having an extra combat spell will be useful, especially with Kratos when we're in that full aggressive theme. So those are the layers that are going to be within this one. I'm really excited for this one. I'm going to buy it myself, but I wanted to give you a quick overview of what I'm going to go over in today's video. I already talked about the secret lair, but I wanted to talk about a full deck around Kratos God of War and how to build around it. I'm going to quickly glance over some mono red staples along with key synergy pieces that you could utilize with Kratos. I'm also going to talk about a little bit of a Voltron strategy because we want to attack too. We want to make sure Kratos is swinging and swinging in hard. He has double strike, so if we have ways of equipping him with all sorts of equipment, plus it's flavorful, especially in the 3 God of War games where he gets all sorts of equipment, it just kind of fits the theme perfectly. Another way to approach this deck is to go into a goad theme because really Kratos is kind of goad without goad when you think about it. People will have to attack if they don't want to get damaged. And finally, I'm going to discuss some win cons that you could utilize in the deck. So first things first, let's talk about some staples. So in mono red colors, in order to ramp, you either need to have a lot of rituals or artifact ramp. Ruby Medallion is the best of both worlds. Red spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. This won't affect Kratos, but this will affect everything else. I also like the classics like Mind Stone, Felwar Stone, and Liquid Metal Torque. Liquid Metal Torque in a mono red deck is probably the best mana rock you could utilize, mainly because of that tap ability. Making something into a non-land permanent can help you use your artifact removal into just any non-land permanent removal. You could get rid of an enchantment, a creature, really anything that's a non-land permanent when you turn it into an artifact, so this is perfect for the deck. I like some other ones that have a little bit more utility, like Cursed Mirror. This is great because it enters the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield until end of turn, except it has haste. So if somebody has like a Blightsteel Colossus, you can make Cursed Mirror into the Blightsteel Colossus with haste. I mean, you're already going to have haste with Kratos anyways, but still, Cursed Mirror is a great copy effect in red. I also like Throne of Eldraine. This is great in any monocolor deck. You choose a color and you tap 4 mana of the chosen color, spend this mana only to cast monocolored spells of that color, and this could help us draw cards by paying 3 mana and tapping it. So of course there are some great options as far as ramp goes, but we also want to have some card draw, and I geared this more towards a bracket 3, bracket 4 type of deck, so that's why the One Ring is in here. It's perfect because in mono red we don't have too much card draw. You have card selection with drawing cards and discarding cards, but actual card draw we don't have that in abundance, so the One Ring is really good. Another card I think is really good is Seize the Spotlight. This recently jumped a lot. I think it's because of MTG Goldfish talking about this, but this is really good. Each opponent chooses Fame or Fortune. For each player who chooses Fame, gain control of a creature that player controls until end of turn, untap it. Those creatures gain haste until end of turn. For each player who chooses Fortune, you draw a card and create a treasure token. Most likely in some situations I've seen people never give their creature away, which means we're drawing 3 cards and getting 3 treasure tokens off of a 3 mana spell. It's just absolute value. You do also need some interaction. Interaction is very important, of course, with removal. You have Lightning Bolts, you have Blasphemous Act, a lot of red spells that deal damage. You also have redirect spells that could help save your creatures like Deflecting Swat or Untimely Malfunction. I also like Return the Favor. This works as a copy spell and a redirect spell the more you pay into that spree ability. So again, quickly wanted to go over the staples, but I also wanted to focus on some synergy pieces with Kratos because there's a lot, because we want our opponent's creatures to attack or sometimes not attack so that we could deal damage, and we could kind of manipulate that. So there are some cards like Silent Arbiter. No more than 1 creature can attack each combat. No more than 1 creature can block each combat. This is very good for this type of deck because Kratos is going to get huge with a lot of equipment. Spoiler alert. If they're just going one-on-one against Kratos, most likely they're going to lose. And since a lot of people can't attack with their creatures, and we really only mainly have Kratos on the battlefield, we might have some creatures here and there. They're going to take a bunch of damage because they didn't attack, and we're just going to be laughing at their face in the pure chaos of it. There are some similar options like Ensnaring Bridge, which creatures with power greater than the number of cards in your hand can attack. Crawlspace, no more than 2 creatures can attack you each combat. Or even Caverns of Despair. All players may attack with no more than 2 creatures each turn and block with no more than 2 creatures each turn, so very similar to the Silent Arbiter. Though I will say this is from Legends, so it's a lot more expensive, around $50. So maybe if you can, just proxy it. Another really fun option is Urabrask the Hidden, and this one I immediately thought of with Kratos God of War, mainly because all creatures will have haste including your opponents, so most likely they'll try to swing in away anyways. But with Urabrask on the battlefield, all creatures or opponents enter the battlefield tapped. That is going to be super annoying, especially for the token maker. Let's just say somebody has a doubling season now and they made like 5 tokens into 10 tokens with doubling season, but they can't swing in with their creatures. That means they're going to take 10 damage off of Kratos because they entered tapped. So even though that first ability, all creatures we control have haste, is a little redundant because of Kratos, that second ability of all our opponent's creatures getting in tapped is going to be huge, making us deal a ton of damage. I just love this synergistic piece. And another card that reminds me of Urabrask in a little bit of a different way is Smoke. For 2 red mana, players can't untap more than 1 creature during their next untap phases. This is going to be perfect in this deck because we're really only going to have Kratos on the battlefield. Maybe we might have a couple others, but Kratos is the real star of the show. We'll just untap Kratos, and a lot of people who have those token decks are going to only untap 1 creature, and it's just going to be a nightmare for them because they can't swing in with any of those tokens, and they get a lot more damage at their end step with Kratos. Again, Smoke and a lot of these cards are going to be very fun for the deck. So those are some of the staples along with the synergistic pieces with Kratos. I I do want to go into the Voltron strategy a little bit, mainly because Kratos does have double strike. That is going to be very important. The more we put power on Kratos, the more he's going to deal that much more damage with double strike. A funny one that works very similar to Urbrask and Smoke is Mjolnir Stormhammer, and I think this is just funny because, of course, in the God of War Ragnarok game, Kratos actually fights Thor, but he never gets to use Mjolnir. He actually held it once, but it didn't really work out with him too much. But this actually works very good with Kratos because of the ability, whenever a equipped creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls, then put a stun counter on it. Then Mjolnir deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of tapped creatures that opponent controls, and this works hand in hand with Kratos' ability. All creatures have haste, and people are incentivized to attack, and because most likely they're all going to be tapped, we're just going to be dealing damage to them whether they're attacking or not attacking. If you do want to protect Kratos because most likely he's going to be a target, you may want to include cards like Mithril Coat or even Commander's Plate. Commander's Plate is incredible, mainly because he gives Kratos +3/+3 and protection of each color that is not in your commander's color identity. So most likely if you're playing against a Traxa deck, well, they can't really do much against you. You could constantly swing in with them taking 10 damage, and they can't even block it because it has protection from Sans Red. Also with Mithril Coat, it does give Kratos indestructible, which honestly I feel like Kratos should have some sort of ability that gives him indestructible anyways. I mean, there is the Tyrite Sanctum that kind of does it. It's a land that you could sacrifice it, put an indestructible counter on a god. This actually works very well with Kratos because he's already a god himself. But let's keep moving along. Another card I like in here is Sword of the Animus. This will help you ramp. Whenever a equipped creature attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. And of course it buffs up Kratos by giving him +1/+1. If you want to tremendously buff up Kratos, Blackblade Reforged, depending on how much land you have on the battlefield, he'll get +1/+1 for each of them. Also, because of that last ability, you may want to include cards that give lifelink to Kratos, mainly because Kratos is going to be dealing the damage to that player. So cards like Shadow Spear and Luxodon Warhammer buffing up our commander, as well as giving him lifelink and trample, will help us tremendously. But I think one of the better equipments that you could put in this deck is the Aether Spark. I think the Aether Spark is heavily underrated. I think it's one of the best equipments in the game. It's also a Planeswalker. It has that one ability to buff up your creature like Kratos. You could also draw 2 cards for its minus ability, and for its last minus ability, you could add 10 mana of any one color. So it's really just providing ultimate utility for you. It's buffing up Kratos, giving you card draw, and giving you mana, everything you need in a mono red deck. So those are the equipment. I was going to talk about how they could relate to some of the weapons in God of War, but they don't really do that. I wish there were more weapons that we got in the Secret Lair. That could have been reskins of like the Leviathan Axe, the Blades of Chaos, or even Dropnir. I know those are from God of War Norse mythology games, but still you kind of get the point. But now I'm going to move on to the next section and talk about incentivizing our opponents to attack each other instead of ourselves. So there are ways we could incentivize our opponents to attack each other instead of ourselves. Obviously, goad is one way. I'm not going to dive into goad too much because I would rather sometimes want people to not attack instead of attack, but there are some good goad options like Disrupt Decorum and a more flavorful option with a Crowan War. I think a Crowan War is perfect because it's Greek inspired. You gain control of a creature, and then with that second ability, until your next turn, creatures your opponents control attack if able on each combat. And of course, because they will all have haste, they're forced to combat, even the ones that have summoning sickness because of Kratos. But the real kicker is that last ability. Each tapped creature deals damage equal to its power to itself, so that is going to be helping us clear the board along with goading our opponent's creatures. Another goad option I like is Spectacular Showdown. Put a double strike counter on target creature, then goad each creature that had a double strike counter put on it this way, and it has overload, so you could change it to each creature, so every creature will have goad and have double strike. So all chaos is going to happen when this is played. But again, I didn't add too much goad effects because I feel like Kratos is sufficient enough. If there is a huge board state that's looking at me, maybe some goad options are good, but then there is a time and place to use those. You could also pair up all those things with Bedlam. This is going to be annoying because creatures can't block. This will happen to us too, but again, if we have some of those effects where creatures can't attack us due to a certain ability, this might be useful to help close out the game too. Again, I would rather do it the simple way of incentivizing people to attack each other. Something like Blast Furnace Hellkite or Death Kiss can help give creatures double strike or double their power when they attack opponents. Of course, this won't happen when they attack us. Another card similar to those is Frontier Warmonger. This gives each creature menace that's attacking our opponents. This works perfectly similar to the other options. So again, we want to lead everyone to attack each other instead of us because of course we want to stay in the game and ensue chaos as much as we can, mainly because we want to stick around, make sure people are all at war at each other, and while they're distracted killing each other, we could close out the game in multiple means and bring down the destruction of Olympus, or really your commander table. So there's a lot of ways you could help close out the game in this deck. You could use some damage doublers, cards like Furnace of Wrath, or even Dictate of the Twin Gods. Can ensure if a source would deal damage to a creature or player, it deals double that damage to that creature or player instead. This will affect you too. I will say that this could be a high risk, high reward type of cards, but then again, I think this is absolutely worth it, especially Dictate of the Twin Gods, because you could flash it in where people least expect it. You could utilize another enchantment like Gratuitous Violence. If a creature you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage instead. This works a little bit more cleanly compared to the rest because Kratos will deal damage in the form of combat damage or at each end step trigger of an opponent or yourself. You could utilize some damage doubling creatures like Twin Flame Tyrant, Sawhorn Nemesis, and Sulfur Mayhem Dominus. I would say Twin Flame Tyrant is probably the best out of these because if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent or permanent opponent controls, it deals double that damage instead. So this will work with all your effects. However, Sawhorn Nemesis, if you really want to narrow in at one guy and target him, you totally could do so because it enters the battlefield, you choose a player. If a source would deal damage to the chosen player or permanent they control, it deals double that damage instead. So if there's somebody that counter too many of your spells, you could just point this towards them and deal a bunch of damage with your opponents and yourself. I also like Sulfur Mayhem Dominus because it's going to be non-creature damage that works with Kratos' second ability, not necessarily combat damage. I still think it's going to be useful. You could also use some damage triplers like Fiery Emancipation as well as City on Fire. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage instead. This could really punish opponents if they don't attack with their creatures, but honestly, if anything else, you're swinging with Kratos with Double Strike, dealing triple or even double damage with some of these other cards can really close out the game. But of course, that's not the only way you could close out the game. You could also use Infect with Grafted Exoskeleton. You attach it to Kratos. All the damage you deal with him, whether it's in the form of combat damage or that second ability, is going to be in the form of poison counters, and if opponents have 10 or more poison counters, they automatically lose the game. So any form of damage is going to apply to that. Again, it's a little bit more salt inducing. Not a lot of people like poison, but I think it's fine, especially in this instance. However, with all that said, that is going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video on Kratos God of War. I can't believe I'm saying that on a Magic the Gathering video right now because I love the game so much. I am so excited to get my hands on these cards and make two different decks with Kratos God of War as well as Kratos and Atreus. These games meant so much to me in my childhood and really in my adulthood. Currently, I'm actually playing Ragnarok right now. I'm about halfway through and I'm just having a fun time. It was just random that this kind of came up where they were doing a God of War Secret Lair. I was literally in the middle of playing the game and it was announced, so the timing couldn't be any more perfect. I plan to make a deck tech around each of the PlayStation exclusive Secret Lair cards. This is the first one of many. I am going to finish off with Kratos and Atreus because I feel like that's the grand finale. I'm going to try to do something special with that deck, so definitely stay tuned and subscribe. And so with that out of the way, thank you for stomping by.
Generate by AI.